तुमको चाहिए होगा ना, कागज दे दो मेरे को फिर।
One and all, episode 2 of the State of the Environment, #Planet Talks with me, Simi Mehta. I'm delighted to present to you from the Center for Environment, Climate Change and Sustainable Development at Impact and Policy Research Institute this very pertinent talk. Our special guest for today is an expert, a creative thinker, a social worker, and a compassionate and empathetic voice of the underprivileged, Roma Malik. She is the Deputy Secretary General of the All India Union of Working People. Forest rights and people's movements in India have largely centered around not just the struggle for the rightful shares by the people dependent upon the forest spaces and produce, often the indigenous and the lesser privileged sections of the society, but also for the protection of the environment. Ms. Malik has dedicated her life to working for the rights of the forest and tribal communities and has sought to better understand their problems and work with them to find sustainable solutions. Today, we will understand the various dimensions of the forest rights and people's movements in India, as well as the challenges and way forward during a time when COVID-19 has plagued almost every aspect of human life. Having said this, it is my honor to invite Ms. Roma Malik to share her views. Over to you, ma'am. Ma'am, could you please unmute yourself?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Simi, and it's really my pleasure that you have invited me in this program of IMPRI. It's great to share my views, and though things are very, very difficult, and I don't know how you chose this topic, because generally the environment, you know, when you talk about environment, the issue of forest rights and especially the people is always missing. You know, it's generally the environmental lobby in our country is more focused on the flora and fauna and the technical aspect of the environment, rather than the people who are the key factor in the environment and ecological, because there is a symbiotic relationship of the people with the environment, and it is often being missed out. So I'm really surprised at how you brought this topic and invited me to speak on this, and that's why I'm really obliged and I'm really thankful to you for including this topic in the environment debate. So how should I begin? Can you just give me a lead?
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Simi.
Yes, ma'am. So thank you, ma'am. You could initially for 15 to 20 minutes, you can share your insights on the theme, and then we will have a few exchanges in terms of question and answers, if that is fine with you, ma'am. Am I audible?
I didn't hear what you said. It got stuck.
Okay. So I said that for the initial 20 to 25 minutes, if you could share slides, and then we can have interactive, some question and answers for another 15 minutes. So that should be fine.
Okay, that's fine.
Yes, thank you.
So let me start with my introduction. Ours is a national level organization, and basically it's related to the Trade Union Act, and it's a union, and you'll be surprised at how come a union is functioning in the forest area, and we are perhaps the first union in the forestry sector that has been formed to fight the people's right, and we are known as All India Union of Forest Working People. So, and we took a conscious decisions to form union because first of all we believe in a democratic way of struggle, and we follow the legacy of Bhagat Singh, and we feel that all the organizations which are struggling for their rights has to be democratic, and since it's in the forest area, and then you have so much of labeling by the state that any struggle in the forest area is a Maoist struggle or the Naxal struggle. So it was very important for us to have that democratic nature in the struggle, and that's why it was formed a union, so that more and more participation of the community people should come into the union, because union gives representation of the entire members in the union, and they can come up to the post holders level also. And secondly, since it was the issue of the forest rights, and forest rights issue is a very, very critical issue that involves the control of the natural resources, the land, the water, and the minerals, and all the kind of very important aspects that is being captured or being monopolized by the corporate sector also. So there is an inherent kind of a struggle, and there is a kind of inherent conflict with these kind of forces, and that is not now or after the globalization took place. It is still, it's there since last 250 years, and when the British colonized our country, it started from the Adivasis who are living in the forest area, and they had to fight because British wanted to bring all these resources as their to build up an eminent domain, and that was resisted by the forest people. So when you are going into the forest area and working for forest rights, you are inevitably you have to face the onslaught of the capitalist forces, the state machinery, the police, the forest department, mafias, contractors. So it's very important to build up a very strong organization to fight all these forces. Otherwise, you will be labeled as, Maoist, because you are bound to, to face this repression and this kind of atrocities. The people are quite attract, attracted to take on guns, and that's what we have resisted. That no, it has to be. It is a very long battle, and has to be fought in a democratic front, and that's why this union was formed. And you'll be very happy to know that in our union, more than 60% executive post and the post holders are women. And our president is a tribal woman, ex-women chairman, women commission chairman from Arunachal Pradesh, Jarju Mete. Our vice president are two very powerful women from India, Tista Sitalwad, famous human rights activist from Maharashtra, Bombay, and Chandra from Nagpur, and so on. And there are very Adivasi women into this union. So this is actually a union also, which is women-led organization, and which has a strong roots in the forest area, and where women are in the forefront. So that's why I wanted to tell you about the organization a little bit, because you asked me to speak on the forest right movements and its challenges. So in a way, I have pointed out that to fight for the forest right or movements, we need these. This is the biggest challenge: how to fight, and then the challenge is to build up this organization, the democratic organization, and in a very difficult area like forest. So this is one of the biggest challenge, and we have overcome it, and we have at least spent some 30 years to build up this organization, and which have stood very strongly, and that represents the voice of the forest people. Though it does not cover entire country, but it has definitely a representational voice, and wherever it has got its presence, there are very strong movements that is taking place. So when we talk about the forest rights movement, it dates back to the period, when the British came into our country and they invaded our resources for the overseas development. And the forest was the first kind of resource that was available very freely to them, and they exploited for more than 100 years. There were many kind of struggles that we have seen in the Adivasis area, especially in Jharkhand area, and many martyrs also. The first being the Tilka Maji and his associates from Pahadia tribe, who struggled against these tribes, against the British, when they came within 50 years of their invasion. But these are not reported in any history books, and not they are mentioned even in the. And Tilka Maji was one of the martyrs and one of the very brave Adivasi, who straight away went into the office of collector, and he said, "Who are you? How can you say this forest is yours? The forest belongs to our Singh Bonga. Singh Bonga is our sun. The सूरज देवता का ये जंगल है. आप कैसे कह सकते हैं हमारा जंगल है? किसने आपको इजाजत दी?" And he killed him in his office by his bow and arrow. तीर कमान से उसकी हत्या कर दी. उसके बाद तिलका माझी को फांसी की सजा सुनाई गई, और वो एक तरह से सबसे पहले एक शहीद हुए इस पूरी जल जंगल जमीन के जो पूरी इंपीरियल ताकतें, जो साम्राज्यवादी ताकतें थी, उसमें सबसे पहले शहीद होने वाले तिलका माझी, सिद्धू कानू और तमाम तरह के और भी जो नेता थे आदिवासी, एंड देन followed by Birsa Munda in early 19th century. So this is the kind of history that we have a legacy, and that legacy has been, carried on by the Adivasis of our country, who are still fighting. They are still fighting the fight that this forest belongs to us. The state has been, after British left, the Indian state that captured the power from the British, that has, which Bhagat Singh also said that Angrez to chale gaye lekin kale Angrez baki hain. He referred to the caste and the Brahminic structure of the country, and he said that there are the lower caste, the Adivasis, the oppressed people are yet to get liberated from this exploitation. So that conflict remained even after independence. So I would like to mention here that this Forest Right Act that came into 2006 and was passed by the Parliament after the 60 years of independence. So one of our leader from forest village, in where the forest village used to plant thousands and thousands of hectares of trees, but they were not allowed to construct any house for them. They were only allowed to live in a mud house. So its leader Munni Lal ji had said, when this act was passed, कि हमको तो 1947 में आजादी नहीं मिली, हमको आजादी तो 2006 में मिली है. So this is the plight of the forest people, that they have not felt that they have been granted freedom when whole country was celebrating freedom in 1947. So they were in fact more colonized after British left, and the forest department became the biggest colonizer, the biggest landlord of this country. Though our constitution talks that landlordism should be abolished, you will be surprised to know that forest department is one such department that annexed the Indian forests and their land by their Colonial Act 1927, Indian Forest Act, and they colonized more than 23% of our land, which is around 7,000 and hectare of 7.5 crore हेक्टेयर लैंड है और देश की 23% लैंड है जो उनके कब्जे में है जबकि हमारे देश के अंदर whatever the revenue laws that was passed after independence, none of the revenue laws talks about handing over land to the forest department. So they have taken over this land illegally, and that too the Indian government allowed that, the Supreme Court allowed, the Parliament allowed through the Gazette notification. And Gazette notification was done on the basis of 1927 Colonial Act of Indian Forest Act and even Zamindari Abolition Act, and thousands hectare of Gram Sabha land was transferred to Forest Department. तो आज ये वन विभाग जो है ये मालिक बन के बैठा है जंगलों का एंड इट इज द प्राइम ऑपरेसर of the forest people. It has nothing to do with the saving of environment or the saving of the forest. The act which they follow is the 1927 Indian Forest Act, and the first line of that act says it is to consolidate the revenue in the forest area. It does not talk about protection of the forest area. So it is in this hand that the forest went, and you can see the plight of forest. The forest department changed whole of the nature of the forest, natural forest, as British use this natural forest for their development, for the development of railways. You must have remembered that till few decades we had all wooden sleepers in the Indian railways across the country, and that wooden sleepers came from Himalayas very endangered trees like Kharsu, Moru, Devdar, and all these trees, and they were cut mercilessly, and they were allowed to, they were thrown into the Yamuna and Ganges stream, and they came down as a sleeper. But many of these wooden blocks were, left behind, and they got rotten away, and that was destroyed, and then that was devastated by the British companies. And even after our independence, the same kind of denudation of the forest continued. And the commercial forestry and the monocultures started in Himalayas. Lakhs and lakhs of pine trees were allowed, eucalyptus were brought into, which was very, very bad and acidic for the soil or the Himalayan, the biodiversity and the whole environment. But this was not checked in, and the entire country, the whole natural forest was destroyed, and they were cut in the name of national development, somewhere for the industries, for the expansion of industries, expansion of roads, mining, then power sector. The area where I work in Singrauli, in Sonbhadra area, it is a power hub, which is known as the energy capital of India. There it produces around 20,000 megawatt of power, and it has most of the wonderful forest in the country. It was also termed as Switzerland of India by the Nehru when he went to inaugurate the Rihan Dam in 1965, in 1960s, in early or maybe 50s. So it was all, destroyed in the name of development of the nation. So this was, the kind of, and even that time, the Adivasis kept on fighting against it. The forest people did not leave their agitation, though they were termed and they were never recognized in the mainstream, politics or mainstream life. And their life also was, and they are the most displaced people of the 8% of the population of tribal. More than 60% have been displaced for various kind of projects that came after the independence. But the forest struggle continued. They kept on struggling for their forests, for their livelihood, for their land, for their water, for their resources, and this struggle is still going on. At one point of time, the Indian government, when Manmohan Singh was Prime Minister of our country, and even now, it was said that 200 districts are under Maoist grip. Among the 600 district, 200 are. But I have seen, and I have been working in this forest area since last 3 decades. I have seen that there are more democratic struggles in the forest areas than the Maoist struggle. And Maoist struggles are not centered around the fight and struggle of the forest resources and their livelihood and their rights. They are more against the atrocities by the state and the eminent domain. So it is the democratic struggles are the examples which are going on. You take Northeast, you take Kashmir, you take Northern India, you take Southern India, you take Western India, you will find that all these struggles are in democratic in nature. They are going on, although they are small or they're big, but they are going on and they are being, taken up by the Adivasis, very Adivasis and the other forest people, and which are Dalits and other kind of forest people in our country. So this is a very complicated area, and still the struggle is going on. The Forest Right Act came in for 2006. It came to recognize the rights of the people in the forest area, and Parliament admitted in its preamble that the historical injustice have been done to the forest people. But in that spirit, the act has not been implemented in the ground in that spirit. And it is still lagging behind. Many states have not even started talking about it. Since it's not like an NREJ program where you have to distribute money or you have to, give some kind of work to people. It's actually basically the recognition of land, of the resources. So which is very difficult. If the land and the resources are handed over to the Gram Sabha, as the Act talks about, the Gram Sabha has a supreme power, then the state fears then that they will lose control over these forest areas. The companies will not get benefit. The influential people will not be able to exploit it. The feudal elements will not be able to survive. They will be not getting cheap labor for their fields for harvesting. Even the companies will not get cheap labor for their harvesting. If the people of the forest area, as it was also pointed out by the Ministry of Tribal Affairs in 2012, that more than 50,000 crore of revenue can be generated. This is a very rough idea. It's, I think, in millions and millions, billions of rupees, and that can eradicate the poverty in the forest area. So that is the main conflict, because if the forest resources, land, water, everything is recognized and given to Gram Sabha and the people, then the state will lose control over them. The vested interests will no longer be able to exploit their labor and the resources, and in fact they will become poor and the poor people will become rich. So this is the kind of conflict that is going on since that time, and we are struggling very hard to get this act implemented. Every time whenever we go for this implementation, there is either criminal cases filed on people, encounters are being done, firing is done, their houses are looted, their houses are damaged, their crops are being raised, and they have been thrown into jails. They filed lakhs and lakhs of false cases have come up after 2006. And whereas the act recognizes that if there is any case, that will be used as a forest right evidence in that case. But there are more of kind of injustices happening in the forest area. So this is like a brief introduction to the subject, and I think from here we can start the question and answer that we can proceed ahead.
Very much, ma'am. Thank you very much for enlightening us of your work.
Can you be louder?
I
can't hear you.
Ground level work that you.
Can you be louder?
Am I audible now?
No. Sound is very little.
Am I audible now, ma'am?
Now it's okay.
So thank you very much, ma'am, for enlightening us of your impressive amount of work that you are doing at the grassroots. And in fact, I am very proud to tell you that I actually belong to the auspicious land of Sidhu Kanu and Birsa Munda.
Oh,
So
great.
with this, I would like to ask you, yes.
Mm.
So in your several decades of grassroots work, have the governments at all levels been non-cooperative, or have you witnessed some form of appreciation and support to the forest movements from the authorities, including the bureaucracy? What has been your experiences in that front?
Um, that is true that we can't say that there was no support from the government. There was a support from the government. That's why the act came into being. The parliament passed this act, and I remember that there was many left parties also involved in 2004 when this in the common minimum program, the the UPA one government talked about uh, bringing this act, and this act was enacted. uh, but there was so much of pressure, like there is so much of resistance in the ground level and at the government level also, because the vested interests are everywhere. So if there is one lobby that wants to implement the act, the other lobby wants to kind of stall the act. Like for 1 year, even the UPA government took 1 year to bring its rules, and the whole environment lobby, the tiger lobby, worked against this law to make it defunct, not to get implemented, and the rules were not allowed to make. Even at one point, Rahul Gandhi also came out against this act and talked about that if the forest is given to people, it will be destroyed. But later on, uh, they also realized politically that in the forest area, it's very important that the rules are being made and the rights should be given. So we have to work very hard with the government and the political level. And there are some very good experiences also. And for example, in UP, the best time we had in the implementation was when BSP was in power in 2000, from 7 to 2012. And that was a period, when that act, because their constituency is Dalit and poor people, so that's why maybe they could understand. And at that time, there was a lot of movement in the Sonbhadra area, the Kamur area of UP, and that has a five state border: UP, Jharkhand, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh. So at that time, the women and people started reclaiming their land because Act had come in 2006 and there was no implementation of the Act. So thousands of hectares of land was reclaimed by Adivasis, saying that this is ours. And then we were sent to jail. Many of us were sent to jail. And that time, the government responded to it, and they felt that this was a wrong kind of. They started terming us a Maoist movement. But when the democratic struggle started, the government had to step in, and they had to lift NSA against me. I was booked under NSA. I was the first woman to be booked under NSA, and they invited us to talk. And in fact, that incidentally, our national working president, Mr. Sanjay Garg, he was a minister in the BSP government also. He comes from a social movement background, but he opted to be in the political parties from Saharanpur constituency in the Uttar Pradesh. So, and we worked through him, and we found that it was very important to work at the political level. We cannot denounce it, and we have to politically engage with the political parties at all the times. So during that time, this act was we kind of made aware of this act to the officials and the government. They organized a meeting with the top level political advisors of the CM Mayawati, and then a big meeting with the officials was called in, and the state level monitoring committee, which is according to the act, it has to be formed. That was formed, and we were inducted into it. Though I was not an Adivasi, but I was inducted as a special invitee. And then three of our Adivasis representative from the community were also inducted. And for 2, 3 years, 4 years, we worked with the government to implement this act. And in various districts, like in Lakhimpur Kheri, Dudhwa National Park, in Sonbhadra area, Kamur area, and various other places, we had worked with them, and we had implemented the act, and even the forest villages were converted into revenue villages. And similarly in West Bengal also, we work with the West Bengal government, and they have also done some good work, very nominal. With the Bihar government also, then I was also a part of the joint review committee that was formed in 2010 by the Ministry of Environment, and that was headed by Jairam Ramesh, and the Ministry of Tribal. And it was a 20-member committee, and the head of that committee was Dr. N.C. Saxena. And we were 20 people. Forest department were also there, non-officials were also there, officials were also there, and activists were also there. So this joint committee also brought report, and we visited some 12 states and did this report. And this is 600 pages report, and a very comprehensive report, and that brought recommendations to how to get this act implemented. So these are few, but after 2012, the atmosphere of the country, political scenario changed, and 2014 especially, after the right-wing politics started and the BJP came power, nothing has been moving. As you know, they are already, taking away the rights of the people, the labor laws, the farmers, the student rights. They're after everybody. So the forest rights are the rights which are, the last thing which can be. But one positive thing after 2017, our working president, Mr. Sanjay Garg, was again elected as a MLA from Saharanpur, and he argued in the Legislative Assembly about the Forest Right Act in UP Assembly. So it was that time Yogi Adityanath had brought around 40 villages, forest villages into revenue, because he belongs to Gorakhpur constituency, and Gorakhpur has maximum forest villages that was, since colonial times, have no rights, no basic amenities and facilities in the forest area, very pathetic conditions. So that was one positive thing, even in BJP government, and even in Yogi Adityanath's time, that these villages were, converted into revenue villages. But here also, politically, from opposition, like Sanjay Garg is that this time was from Samajwadi Party. So the opposition taking up these cases has worked at the highest political level, then in trickle down. So these are the things, one needs had been doing, and we have got some of these positive. That's why we keep on insisting in engaging with the political parties in the opposition, though they are not very proactive. वो लोगों में अभी कोई दमखम ही नहीं है किसी बात को करने का, लेकिन फिर भी क्या करें? We have to definitely, be depending on them, and talking up to them regarding these issues. And दूसरे लेवल पे लोग बहुत मजबूत हैं. People are very conscious about their rights. In fact, in forest area, after the 2006 Act came, the democratic space has been widened. वहां तो पहले कुछ पता ही नहीं लगता था. फॉरेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट जो कहानी बता दे वही कहानी चलती. कोई डेमोक्रेटिक स्पेस लोगों के लिए अवेलेबल नहीं था. अगर वो लोग अपनी आवाज उठाते थे तो उनको दुनिया भर के केसों में डाल देते जेल में, और अगर वो हथियार उठा के बात करने लगते थे तो वो जो है माओवादी बोलते थे. तो इस तरह से जो है the democratic space widened. People started raising their voices. They started implementing the law. They in their own way. They started reclaiming their lands. They started forming forest right committees. So the process is going on and on. People are aware that one day or the other they will be the real owners of the forest. The forest department has to go. The colonial legacy has to go. The companies, the corporates who are looting them has to end this looting. So this is the kind of the atmosphere today we are facing. And in this lockdown, the things are become even more challenging, So this is, I think, satisfies your answer.
Yes, thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you for answering these questions, the questions so candidly. Ma'am, there are the policies, the national forest policy, as well as the forest dwellers, the scheduled tribes, and the other forest dwellers recognition of forest rights act of 2006, which really focus on the marginalized communities and for the protection and regeneration and development of the communities, of the forest communities. But why do you think the apex court has very recently ordered for the eviction of lakhs of forest dwellers and snapping them of their forest rights? Could you throw some light on this, ma'am?
See, what I was discussing about it, that there were a lot of forces which was against this act, and one big force was the wildlife lobby, and they had filed some 8 to 9 cases from various states and in the high courts and the to stall this act. And one of the case was by the wildlife first, and that one of the historical one BNHS also. So they had filed a case some 10 years ago about the constitutional validity of the act. So uh, so that was, it has never come up in these times. But last year in January and February, suddenly this was taken up by the Supreme Court, and there must be some political reasons. And we feel the main reason was a Campa Act that was passed in this present government time, and it has got like million of rupees in their account, and which is a corporate money which they wanted to use. So they cannot use it unless this act is there, and that's why they wanted to bring this act down. Though and they came up with this order, Supreme Court, that the cases that the claims that has been rejected, those people will be evicted from the forest. So although this was not in purview, a jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, they were not supposed to be, giving orders on the process of rejecting the rejection of the claims and the eviction. So the case was on the constitutional validity. They did not talk about it, but they talk about the rejected claims, which was not under their jurisdiction. And then the nationwide protest began. From every nook and corner of the forest area, the protest came, and in national and international news, also was carried on, and it was, against this order. So then the Supreme Court themselves have to, that bench came up with a stay for its own order in February, and that was on hold, and still till date it is on hold, and the hearings have been going on, and then they pulled up the states. So 9 states have given their affidavits that the due process of the claims have not been carried out by the state. The Ministry of Tribal Affairs has given a very long, elaborated affidavit in 2014 and 2000, now also to Supreme Court, that the process of the claims and the process of implementation of forest right has not been taken place in a due legal manner, and it has to be reviewed. So it is just standing there here and then, and it was a test case. For example, the labor laws are coming, and the issue of the uh, where the farmers issue, all these issues. So this government was testing that. Let's see what happens, if we uh, give this order of eviction of some this. At that same time, the Citizen Amendment Act was also being coming in the parliament, and so these both issues, two issues, they became very very important, and because it was talking about evicting people from their homelands. But it did not work out. There was very wide protest, and people have protested, and it is just hanging in the Supreme Court. Nobody's hearing about it. Nobody's talking about it now, and because they feel that it is a kind of if they touch this case, it's a fire, and it is like a wild forest fire. It will spread like anything in the entire forest area, and it will be difficult for the state to control this kind of mass uprising. So it is still holding on that, and we have filed an intervention application. Our intervention applicants are Adivasi women from forest areas, and they are challenging this order of the Supreme Court, and they have enumerated how the women issues are also very important. The land rights are important. Land to the Adivasi forest resources are important. So some 19 to 20 intervention applications has also been filed, and they have been admitted by the Supreme Court.
Yes, thank you very much, ma'am. It is so encouraging to know that the women are at the forefront, and they are actually bearing the brunt also of the struggle for their forest rights. And thank you very much for sharing these insights. There are a couple of questions from the audience before I have a few other questions to ask you. One question says that do we really advocate for rally for rivers and agroforestry? And the other is, are there any legal ambiguities and conflicting provisions when it comes to policies in tribal areas like PESA, FRA, and autonomous councils, especially in the Northeast? So your quick comments on these, ma'am?
I didn't understand the later part of your question.
Are there any legal ambiguities and conflicting provisions when it comes to policies in the tribal areas, especially in the Northeast?
No, there are like when we talk about the people's legislation like Forest Right Act, PESA Act, and the act, which will be which are important to conserve our forest resources and protecting the livelihood of the people. There are various policies and acts also, legislation which are conflicting. For example, this Indian Forest Act, the Colonial Act, which is still operating. And there are new Mining Act, the Environmental Assessment Act, the Coal Act. There are other acts, in the Environment, Waterways Act. So, and Land Acquisition Act. So, in a way, मतलब कि एक हाथ से दो, दूसरे हाथ से लो वाली बात है कि आप एक हाथ से दे रहे हैं, दूसरे कानून से आप उसको छीन रहे हैं. तो ये वाली जो पूरी पॉलिसी है, it's very conflicting. If you have to implement Forest Right Act, then you cannot have joint forest management, and you cannot have CAMPA this act. They are conflicting in nature. So either there has to be one. You focus only on FRA, then bring all kind of conservation practices or protection practices under that. But if you are talking about FRA, which is about the local people's their control and their Gram Sabha powers to be the supreme. But on the other hand, you are bringing joint forest management committees which are being manned and controlled by the mafia's forest department and the vested interest. The other committees, which controls CAMPA funds, which is being also been, carried out by the forest department in the vested interest, which talks about uh, money, or all money related. And even in Northeast people say that they have a sixth schedule area, except Arunachal Pradesh. And that sixth schedule area is autonomous council, and the autonomous councils, even there we have found the forest department entry. What is forest department doing there? The autonomous council should handle their forest on their own, and it should, the autonomous councils committee should be the supreme, like the Gram Sabha, they are supreme. So they should be deciding. Like in GTA, Gorkhaland territorial area, the forest and the is still with the state. It is not under the GTA. So these are very conflicting. So when in the Northeast area, when the forest is talked about, the forest department comes into the picture, and that is conflicting. So there is a conflict, and this conflict has to be resolved, and that the parliament has to play a very proactive role. Supreme Court has to play a very proactive role. They have still not done there. Even the governor's rule that governors say in the six schedule areas has still not even a single day the governor has used his power. They have allowed to get the resources exploited, and the state to take over the control and work against the people's rights and policies, their rights and their fundamental rights even. So these are the areas where we need to concentrate and talk more about.
Thank you very much, ma'am. We have with us Mr. Kamalchand Kispota from NCDHR in Jharkhand. He would like to ask a question to you. Do we have, yes, we have Mr. Kamalchand on the panel. So could you please unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question? आप अपना mic unmute कर लें और video on हो सकता है तो वो भी कर लें. Kamalchand sir. सर आपको मेरी आवाज जा रही है? Okay, okay. Let us continue until Mr. Kispota joins. I think he's having some internet issues. So thank you very much, ma'am, for sharing those insights. And actually, the entire nexus of judiciary and legislature and the executive and of course the people on the ground, and it is very encouraging to know the kind of work and the continued struggle that you are undertaking. Ma'am, you also raised during your talk, you also raised the question of the issue of international transnational trade that existed during the pre-independence times, of course continuing till today. And then on the other hand, we have the forest cover, which is depleting every year. And then the governments are musing over how to keep the temperatures, the global temperatures below 1.5 degrees Celsius of the pre-industrial times. So don't you think there is some sort of contradiction in this? Can be taken into account
Maybe we are losing
the jungle and the...
Simi, we lost your voice. Can you just...
Yeah, in between, yeah. Can you just say later part of what you were saying?
Little,
yes.
Simi, little slowly, yes.
Yeah. So basically, I wanted to know what are your...
Again, we lost your voice.
Again.
Ma'am, to take into account to strengthen the Jal, Jungle and Zameen in this sort of contradiction.
Again, that main part of your question was, lost out.
I will
second line, yes, the second line.
Yes, ma'am, your points of recommendations to the policy which can help strengthen the Jal, Jungle and Zameen given the contradiction that we are actually musing over how to reduce the global temperatures on the one hand, and then we are deliberately leading to or yielding ourselves to depletion of the forest cover every year.
Yeah, the global level, this debate is going on, and it's very important. The states are, they are, what solutions which are they are giving is a corporate solution, because the corporates have to, what do you say, exploit the natural resources for oil, gas, and other kind of things. So they also want to maintain that kind of environmental, mitigation plans also. But they don't, they are not serious about it. They are kind of giving a very kind of a technical solutions, and making the whole globe, when they're monopolizing it again. But they are not involving the people in the right sense, like you can see in Africa or in the Latin America, the Amazonia forest, and there what is happening to that and how it is being exploited. The largest rainforest movement of Amazonia is almost lost, the 50, 60, 80% has been lost. So until unless the people are brought into this debate, it is not going to help. The environmental solution, a climate issue is a climate justice issue. It's an issue of social justice, social equality. And there has to be a kind of equality between the North and the South countries also. The North countries are exploiting the South, and this will not happen. The issue of the third world and the first world countries. So this has to, this has to come into this debates, and there are many debates are happening also, and many conferences have taken place, and even especially in World Social Forum, when that happened in 2004 to 2010, when various debates took place in various countries, wherever these forums took place. And this was a very big debate on how to bring the climate justice into it is a long way until this, and that's why we see a political solution. It's not an environmental solution, is not about just पेड़ and पौधे. पेड़ and पौधे से कुछ नहीं होगा. Environmental solution is a political issue. It is the issue of the people who are oppressed, people who are dependent on these resources for for their livelihood rights. And those are the people who are the working people, working class of this entire world, and their rights have been denied. They are facing the disparity of the incomes. They are facing gair barabari. They are facing all kind of issues. Poverty is a big issue. So until unless we address these issues, and the poverty issue, if we cannot eradicate the poverty, the global environment issue cannot be solved at any cost. And that can only be solved by, talking about these rights. Their international rights should be taken care of. Their equality, and all these issues are very important in today's context.
Definitely.
Moratorium on the exploitation by the companies, by the rich people, by the middle class people, and they should be taught to pay respect, and they should be made aware of the environmental degradation. They should be sensitive about it. They are not even bothered about what is happening to environment. Our Delhi air is like it is, getting poisoned. We are inhaling poisonous, air, and nobody's bothered about it. So this is very serious, how the one class of people, the middle class people, are becoming apathetic, and gradually, they are being apathetic to all the issues, which is very serious.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Of course, yes, it is actually a very serious challenge for us, and
Mm.
how do we incorporate the points of views, how do we incorporate the indigenous practices, and to actually strengthen them. It requires the voices of the people to be
Yeah.
heard and actually raised. And thank you very much, ma'am, for sharing your views. I would now invite Dr. Arjun Kumar, Director of Impact and
Yeah.
Policy Research Institute, to make his concluding remarks, and to perhaps he has a question to pose to you, and then we will end
Okay.
after that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Arjun,
Yes, yes, we have extended some of our time, but nevertheless, I will just check with Kamal sir if he is here. Kamal sir, if you can try speaking. Sir?
I think we can pose the
Never.
question from Kamal sir later. Go
Never.
ahead.
He's in from two devices somehow. Anyways, okay. Yes. Thank you so much, ma'am, for touching upon these issues, which I think many less people touch upon, especially highlighting this very pertinent issue of poverty. And especially during this time of pandemic, many estimates are coming that the poverty rates have doubled, or, in case of developing countries, it has reached to the level of tune of 40 to 50%. We have gone uh, back to 2, 3 decades. Given this scenario, how do you see this, the environmental activism or empathy, respect, this thing should come in, especially when we see that most of our cities are in the bottom of all the rankings, whatever is happening, and all others. Howsoever, there is also the BUR and other reports for climate change. We are also reporting officially that India is doing greatly in this aspect, also in our policy aspect, infrastructure, highways के बगल में ये बना रहे हैं, वो कर रहे हैं. There is a lot of commitment from national leadership. Having said that, ma'am, how do you see, since you also touched upon that this activism is also linked with legal, judicial, and other things. I think most of the youth are very much interested in this, also technical things, also looking from the science aspect. But the fight is so much engraved uh, that many of the youth people are not able to, join, or even not even concerned.
Yeah.
So, can you suggest some ways that how youth and people in policy become more concerned about these areas, and moreover take action for strengthening this fight? Ma'am, your concluding remarks.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a very challenging area, because when you talk about protecting the environment, so the policy makers are bent on creating more and more highways, more and more smart cities, more and more big, kind of luxury, this, and taking more and more, grabbing more and more land. And they will pose this question, are you against this development? ये तो development है, इसके against आप काम कर रहे हैं. और हमारा जो समाज है वो भी वो चाहता है कि इस तरह के हमको facilities मिले. They want more and more smart cities. They want more and more big highways, big roads, big cars, big ACs. So it is not that we don't need all these kind of things. We need it, but there has to be some limit, and limit has to be there, and also that the development cannot happen in an unequitable paradigm. It has to be in an equitable paradigm. If you're talking about development, then you have to talk about the Adivasi sitting at the last rung in the forest area of Kamur, Bihar. There you don't even have a drinking water facility, no roads, no electricity. The Sonbhadra Singrauli area produces 20,000 megawatt of power, but there are more than 100 villages who are without electricity. So how can you justify this? If you are, and this thing has to be made aware, the citizen of this country, the cities have to be made aware. I don't know how they will be aware of these issues, because they are more in a very selfish and a consumerist mode now. They want to consume more and more. They are not at all concerned about the issues of working people, the forest people, the people who are they're doing their household work, the domestic workers. So until unless there is a balance in this consumption pattern of the resources, things are not going to, definitely it will crash one day. Everything is going to collapse. The cities will go without water at one point of time because you will not have that kind of system. Everything is getting privatized. It is going into companies' hand. The state is losing its control. It is privatizing everything. So the more you are, giving the control to the corporate sector, and they are taking more and more over. These are the political questions, and we cannot escape from it because they are eventually responsible for our electricity is being privatized, our water is being privatized, और हमारे सारी चीजें प्राइवेटाइज हो रही हैं तो कल को तो हमारे हाथ में कुछ रहेगा ही नहीं. So these are the questions, this has to be, the development paradigm has to be questioned. It has to be equitable for a Adivasi woman, for a city people. They have to be accommodative. They have to even अपने कुछ comforts छोड़ के अगर वो पूरे समाज के प्रति वो भी समझे कि हमारे फैमिली के मेंबर है, उस तरह से देखें, तभी कुछ हो पाएगा. नहीं तो ये एक बहुत बड़ी जंग है. ये जंग होगी, जद्दोजहद होगी, और इसके अंदर जो अभी पूरा सिनेरियो सामने आ रहा है, पूरा जो वर्कर्स के राइट लिए जा रहे हैं, उसमें किसानों के अधिकार लिए जा रहे हैं, पूरे उन लोगों के जो प्रोडक्टिव फोर्सेस है उनके सारे अधिकार आप छीन के किसको दे रहे हैं? तो ये सारे लोग तो एनवायरनमेंट से जुड़े हुए हैं. So if their rights are being taken away, so you see what will happen in the society. There will be a total unrest, and this unrest will definitely lead somewhere. Either it will go to anarchy or there will be a revolution. Not much less than that. So that will only teach the kind of people who are apathetic to people's view when they will face this kind of situation. Either there will be anarchy or there will be a revolution. They have to learn through a hard way. But these questions will definitely come into surface. Either the policymakers, they ignore it, or the governments are ignoring it, but they are coming up. They will come like a volcano. There will be a volcanic eruption. And if these questions are not addressed properly and effectively in a political manner by the governments, they have to be sensitive towards it. Otherwise, there will be very difficult times coming ahead. This is my response.
Thank you.
I hope.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. In fact, I just wanted to add that even in the advanced countries, Canada, Sweden, now a new term is coming. Most of these countries are also very urban. So 80–90% of their population lives in cities, and they have good structure. Our panchayats don't even have offices and other services, as you rightly pointed out. A new term is coming, remunicipalization of these services, wherein they were in corporate or companies control. But these local government for sustainable local development, they are again taking back these responsibility again into the gamut of state, especially looking into this environmental aspect. So somehow getting all these things again in people's hand is the solution, which also advanced countries is showing us. And thank you, ma'am, for raising all these very pertinent points for especially sustainable local development. Simi, over to you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. So now we come to the end of the program. And as you have rightly mentioned, people are the core of the country, and the entire development paradigm has to be people-centric. And in order to have an equitable, equal, and a just society, and in fact, to continue the battle until everybody's fundamental rights are protected. And for this, the youth, the women, and everyone has an indispensable role to play. So correctly, let there be a revolution. Thank you very much, Roma ma'am, for sharing your powerful thoughts. And I thank all of you in the audience for joining us today. Stay tuned for further episodes of Planet Talks, State of the Environment by the Center for Environment, Climate Change and Sustainable Development of Impact and Policy Research Institute. Thank you very much once again. Thank you,
Thanks
India
a
Water
lot.
Portal, for being our media partner. Thank you very much, ma'am. Have a very good day. Have a very good day, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.